2 days, this is what a federal complaint looks like. And this is that case, that Irving Plaza shooting that happened last May with the rapper Troy Ave. And Troy Ave is free on $500,000 bail. He was charged with gun possession. He's the one that you all saw in that video that NYPD put out and that we put out, of running through the club with the gun out shooting, or looking like he was shooting. That's Troy Ave. So he was charged with weapons possession. He was also charged with attempted murder. Now, come to find out, the feds on Monday, today's Tuesday, yeah. On Monday, I still don't have my whole schedule, back intact yet. But on Monday, a hip-hop podcast personality named Taxstone, his real name is Daryl Campbell, he was picked up at his aunt's home on Alabama Avenue in East New York, and this was on 2 gun charges. One of the charges was gun possession for a convicted felon, because if you're a convicted felon, you're not allowed to have a handgun. The second charge was interstate trafficking with the gun, because the gun came from Florida, which was probably stolen at some point along the way. So he was in federal court today, 500 Pearl Street, and the prosecutor in this complaint talked about some things that I found very surprising. He said that the prosecutors are saying that Taxstone, aka Daryl Campbell, that this 9mm semi-automatic Kel-Tec handgun that was used in the shooting that killed Troy Ave's bodyguard, Ronald Banga McFadden, that handgun, and also wounded Troy Ave and 2 other people, that handgun was actually in the possession of Daryl Campbell, aka Taxstone. So what does that mean? It means that, according to what the prosecutors say, they're saying Taxstone had the gun, that he shot Troy Ave as he was aiming at Troy Ave. Troy Ave's bodyguard, Ronald McFadden, tried to jump in and stop him. That's when he ended up getting shot in the chest and died from that wound. Then there were a couple other shots. One hit a woman that was there, and another went through the floor and hit somebody in the floor below. And then there was a scuffle over the gun. Troy Ave takes the gun, Daryl Campbell, aka Taxstone's gun, takes that gun, and then that's where we see the video that so many of us saw, that NYPD released, where he's running and he's holding out that gun, and then he's running. So what the feds are saying is that 8 months later, that this gun that ended up in Troy Ave's car, because Troy Ave left the club and then went to his car, and the gun was found in the car by police, according to what they're telling us, that this gun belonged to Taxstone. So the question you might ask yourself is, if this is the case, why wasn't Taxstone arrested for the murder of Banga? Why wasn't he hit with some kind of attempted murder charges, which is what they usually do when there's a case of a shooting, and it's with a deadly, of course, a deadly weapon like a gun. So those are some of the questions. But here's what came out in court, which I thought was interesting. The prosecutor, assistant district attorney for the feds, for the federal prosecutors, he said that the reason for this long delay, 8 months since the incident happened, was because so few people were talking. So that was incredible. That was one thing. Then the other thing that he said was that in the past 2 months, somebody started to talk. So it seems like they either picked somebody up who wanted to bargain with them or get a reduced charge or something like that, and that's what happened. And then in terms of the ballistics, this was the interesting thing too, and I wanted to explain this because there were a lot of people having comments on asking me about this. How was the gun in the Irving Plaza shooting, which Troy Avenue allegedly had in his possession in his car, how does that end up being the gun of Taxstone, aka Daryl Campbell? So what happened is, according to the federal prosecutors, Taxstone shoots his gun at Troy Ave. Troy Ave's bodyguard, who ends up being killed, tries to wrestle the gun away. There is a scuffle. Troy Ave is shot, and then Troy Ave picks up the gun and then runs out of that green room and runs out of the club and takes that gun into his car. So that's the narrative that the federal prosecutors are working with right now. So they have somebody that obviously is talking to them and has been talking to them over the last 2 months. And on this gun, here was the other big question, and one of the reasons that I wanted to do the Facebook Live to explain this, because I was, I'm educating myself a lot of times when I'm doing these stories, and what I learn, I love to share with you all, because so many of you make comments, and then, sometimes we'll put everything together and we kind of get to a better place. We get to more, we get more information. I know what questions to ask. A lot of times you'll bring up points, and then those are questions that I'll ask the people that I'm interviewing or whoever's giving the press conference. So in this particular case, the gun, this Kel-Tec 9mm semi-automatic handgun, had DNA from the dead bodyguard, it had DNA from Troy Ave, and it had DNA from Taxstone on it. So how do they look at it? The way they write it in the court papers, they go, there's a billions and billions and billions, how many billions of chances, of probability that it's this person's DNA. But what they said with the gun is the placement of the DNA, and some of you law enforcement and investigators and detectives will understand this better than I do. They said the placement of the DNA on the gun gives you a much better idea of who had actual possession of the gun. So, for example, with this gun, in this case, in these court papers that we got, and that that I read, of course, obviously a couple times, they say that the DNA from Taxstone was found on the trigger of the gun, that it was found on the grip of the gun, where you put your hand around it, and that it was also found on the bottom, on the butt end of the clip or the magazine that gets however that gets put into the 9mm handgun. So his DNA was in places that made them think, almost without any shred of a doubt, according to what the prosecutors say, that without any shred of a doubt that this was Taxstone's gun, that he pulled the trigger. The prosecutor said in court, in open court, we believe Taxstone fired the shots that wounded these three people and killed the bodyguard. He didn't call him the bodyguard, but he said Ronald McFadder. And our condolences, my condolences go out to Ronald McFadder's brother, Shanduke McFadder. He's been a partner with ours in our Push for Peace efforts with the youth, and also with our Hot 97 audience. And I know they've been going through terrible, terrible loss. So my condolences again to you, Shanduke, and to your family, and to Trish, and your babies. But I think the main thing about this is that there's a lot more to this case. So it's very convoluted. It's kind of crazy. And the other crazy thing that you need to know about it too is, here's this man lost his life, Ronald McFadder, and basically this whole beef, if you want to call it that, between Troy Ave and between Taxstone started over social media. It was insults. It was words. It was don't come at me, do come at me. I can handle it, all these kinds of things. So it's a very sad situation that all this had to happen behind it. Now, Taxstone is in federal custody at the moment. The judge today, Judge Peck, said that he was going to grant a bail package. However, the other thing is that now we found out, I just found out a few minutes ago, that the prosecutors appealed the bail. They said that Taxstone should not get bail because he has 2 previous felony convictions, more than 20 arrests, that he's a flight risk, and that basically he belongs behind bars until they figure this whole thing out. So that's where we're at. They're going to go back to court in the morning, on Wednesday morning, and they're going to see how everything's going. And the prosecutors are going to say, Judge, we don't think this guy should get bail. Ken Montgomery, who's the attorney for Taxstone, is going to argue he should get bail, and this bail package should stand, and that's where we are with it. But I have an interview that's here. I have to go do the interview, and I want to invite you, all of you. Tomorrow morning, we're going to be recording a new episode of Street Soldiers. We're going to be talking about the Trump presidency, what it means for urban America, and also what it means for civil rights. And we have a very well-balanced panel. I'm going to go do an interview with somebody right now for that. And so we're going to have a very exciting Street Soldier show for you on Friday night at 10:30 about the new president. Love him or hate him, he's going to be the new president. and people have to deal. So we're going to be talking about how people are dealing with all that. So I certainly hope you'll join us, and please spread the word. And again, thank you all so very, very much for all your support. I'm still a little emotional, a little shaky at times, which is to be expected when you have a loss like this. But I want to thank you all so very much for all the love and all the support and all the comments. It really meant a lot to me. And thank you, and I love all of you. Good night.